We are back with another Bobbyless episode of Energy Bites. I feel lonely over here on my side, but he is busy transitioning with the Devon merger. So I know he wishes he could be here right now instead of having to deal with that. But we are here with the founders of Ionian Labs. Appreciate you guys coming on.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Can you just introduce yourselves and kind of give us what you guys do at the company?
Sure. Yeah, my name is Yazan and Abuashour. I'm a co-founder with Eugene. He's about to introduce himself. And we started mainly a software company in oil and gas. And we'll probably end up talking more about that.
Yeah.
But we both come from an engineering tech background. Graduated from Texas A&M University in biomedical engineering. Originally wanted to be premed, and then 2 years in my degree, I changed.
You didn't want to be in school for a decade?
That's exactly right. I got an internship or a job halfway through my college career, and I was like, it was a tech internship in IT. I was like, people are really successful here, and then I think I could really do this. So that's when I made the pivot and didn't want to delay my graduation.
Nice.
So yeah, after that, started working at some software companies after I graduated, and we end up here.
That's awesome.
So my name is Eugene Nedelea, co-founder with Yazan for Ionian Labs. Also went to Texas A&M, but I graduated in electronic systems engineering. While I was doing that, I fell in love with software, and I had some of my friends who were software engineers, teach me more in depth and, give me stuff to learn about that. Did some projects on my own, ended up getting a job at Opportune, doing some software engineering for them. And I found in the course of my work at Opportune that there's really not a whole lot of options for software in the energy space. And the options that do exist are very old.
Specifically around the LAN solution, is that what you're...
Well, around LAN solution, division order stuff,
order.
Even accounting software, right. Really old, really dated.
Yeah, data entry.
Data entry is
You're
a huge
right
problem.
on making that generalization. I shouldn't have even stated that, because it is a very clear line of, well, was this built before 2010 or was it built after 2017?
And they just
right,
exactly.
Probably 2010 is probably also generous. It's probably 2000-ish.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's basically a 10, 15, 20 year gap in software development for the oil and gas industry. Yeah. And it's very apparent when you
that's great for us.
Right.
All those decade old things.
That's literally why the company was founded, is Colin saw this kind of energy tech revolution happening, and all, people our age working at these companies and being like, this is a stupid problem someone should solve, and starting the companies and doing it. Right. Yeah. And so that's exactly what we're here for. Before we get into any of this, the most important question of the day is, how badly are the Razorbacks going to beat y'all this weekend in football? As a Razorback fan, I've got to ask.
Probably pretty bad.
No, it's not. It's going to be another shit show. We are not good. I think y'all are going to beat the hell out of us.
Yeah, unfortunately, we've been having the best walk or rookie years for the past maybe 4 or 5 years, but it hasn't been panning out for us.
The A&M Arkansas game has always been a great one. It doesn't matter how good or bad either of us are. We always play right to each other. And so it's always a fun one. But as an Arkansas fan, I have to talk some shit before the results are out, because I won't be able to after, more than likely. So okay. Ionian Labs, tell us just high level kind of what y'all do, what problem y'all are solving, and then we'll work backwards as to how you guys came about starting the company and why.
Yeah. So right now what we do is mainly around title work and land acquisition, mineral acquisition. That's where Eugene and I kind of saw the issue, where a lot of manual work and manual reading and data entry. And
so for the average person who hasn't worked in land and title, give them kind of what is the old way of doing things, and then how you guys supplement or complement that.
Yeah. So let's say someone's looking to buy some mineral assets in the Permian Basin in West Texas, and they identify sort of the land or maybe the patch or parcel they want to look at, and they end up having to figure out who currently owns it. And a lot of times it's not one person, just because of how inheritance and probate works. You end up finding many owners with many interests and percentages.
Maybe 64ths.
Exactly. 1/64th, 1/32nd, and then even less than that. And you have to go back as over here in this industry, landmen usually do this work, and they figure out who owns it. And
you have to go back to the first title
from
right?
patent. Yeah. From whenever that land was started being tracked or issued by the county. And a lot of times in Texas, it's the Spanish and Mexican grants where
it's handwritten.
And they use, a lot of them use varas, which is a Mexican way of measuring distance. And that's still being used today. So they have to go through all that to figure out who owns what before you can even like approach the person that you want to buy from.
Yeah. You're not even negotiating anything. You've got to go.
That's exactly
my
right.
first roommate when I moved down here, shout out to Lee Elsner. He had just graduated with his, just finished law school, had just taken the bar and was waiting on his results. And so he started as a landman. And the first day he got back, I remember asking him, how was it? Whatever. And he was like, man, I started at, 18 or early 1900s, late 1800s. And I was like, that's such a random like time. Why then? He was like, oh, well, that's when they started using the typewriter. And that moment I was like, oh, I was like full mind blown. I was like, oh man, you've got like maybe 100 years, if not more before that, where it's handwritten
in cursive
too, right? Yeah. It's not like just print, it's all cursive. So it's like, because he would tell me, like people's names would get mixed up or like just by the person who interpreted the handwriting, right? Like, and all this crazy stuff. So land has always been something for me that is just like, it's fascinating because it's such it's a necessary evil of the whole thing, but it's also like, how do you solve that problem? Like that's a hard problem to solve, but it's a very big one, right? Like it needs to be solved. So let's go into the kind of that part of how you guys came about, how Ionian came about. What was the main problem y'all were trying to solve for? And how do you guys kind of approach that? What do y'all?
Yeah. So the main problem we're solving for is taking out as much, manual labor, as much eyes looking at the paper as we possibly could. Less courthouse time, less time spent with a flow chart and a magnifying glass and a couple of friends trying to figure out if this is a J or a G or a,
right.
So the way we saw it is that fundamentally this problem is a natural language problem. Right. This is a words problem, words interpretation, and LLMs seem to be the perfect tool to solve this problem. A combination of LLMs and good character recognition. So that was the opportunity that we saw. And we also saw that basically nobody working on this.
Yeah.
I think there were a couple companies periodically that tried doing something like this. They tried various.
I was going to say probably OCR and some of the older.
Some of the older OCR methods, they didn't work quite as well. There also weren't LLMs at the time.
Right.
Because this was like, 2018. 2014,
Transformers
some of them
just popped off in 2018. No one even knew what a transformer was in 2018.
Yeah. I think at the time when they came out, they were really only used for like chess. So not a whole lot of overlap there.
Yeah, no, for sure.
But yeah, that's what we saw the opportunity in is using these using this new wave of technology to actually solve like a real problem and not just make a company and slap AI on top of it.
No, I think that's the more I talk about the language model stuff, the more I feel like it's kind of a I don't know, it's like the universe's reaction to all of the data that we have, right? Like it's like a physical property of like if all of these things happen, then we have to have something that like we have all this data now and most of it is text, but we have so much that we can't actually make most of it usable because there is so much, and a human can only ingest so much information per second at a time. And so these language models is like this organic evolution of, okay, well, we've had this, big data and analytics was whatever we was talking about 2-3 years ago. It's like, okay, we've got the data now. We finally figured out that, okay, we've got enough data to make these useful. And now the language model is kind of that next evolutionary step of, for text data, we have a shit ton of that as well. And it just continues to grow by the day. And so how do we make it efficient to use it to get the value and knowledge out of that as efficient? It's, to me, it's like I tell people, it's like the difference in me Google searching versus my parents Google searching, right? Like I'm much more targeted and direct. I know how to Google search and, put things in quotes and all the fun, hacky tricks. I very much so see language models as kind of that, at least one of the big applications of them is like augmented search, right? Mm-hmm. It's just a much, much more efficient, better way of searching and getting to the point instead of trying to keyword hack, which is what Google is essentially, right? So let's dive into it. I assume it's okay. We've got all these documents, land and title documents.
Yeah.
And then is it a RAG model? Is it a custom fine-tuned model? And then let's get into as much detail as you guys are willing about kind of what that stack looks like and what the flow of that is. Like, what are you using for databases? Are you using a RAG architecture? Is it a custom model? All the fun stuff. So let's y'all.
Yeah. So what we do is we like to take all of the data for a given section at one time, and then we'll ingest it all at the same time. And by doing that, we don't really have to do RAG so much because we don't really need to retrieve the data later. We're processing right there on the spot. So we'll extract, the key information that we need, who's selling, who's buying, what are they buying it for? If it's there, right? Where is the tract, right? Township, range, section, whatever. And then we use fine-tuned models for that. And then we put all that in, a custom database that we build. And then we run, after that, we run like a graph search algorithm to, find the chain of title all the way back down, taking into account the effective dates of the documents and all that stuff.
Are y'all using any kind of, for the character recognition stuff, are y'all using OCR? Are you using multi-modal? Are you using some combination? What are y'all kind of doing there?
Yeah. So it turns out if you use a couple different things and then take a consensus, you get higher rates. You get higher accuracy rates. So we use a couple different providers.
Nice.
And then we just like to, poll them, and then we, kick out things that don't poll well, right? So if they all say something different, then
right. Hey, no confidence in that one.
Confidence, pretty low confidence. Yeah. But you end up, you still end up saving, 99% of the work.
Yeah.
There.
No, I think that's the big thing with a lot of this, especially early on, or not even early on. I think like short term and midterm, right? Like, all the news articles about everyone worried about AI taking their job. And it's like, AI is going to make your job a lot easier and a lot more efficient before it takes your job in most cases. And so that's the other thing too. Then you get into the academics or the highly technical people, and they're like, well, if it's not 99% accurate or 100% accurate, how am I supposed to trust it? It's like, well, if it saves you 80% of your time, then I promise you'll trust it really quickly. And so that's cool. How much I can only like I said, I'm responsible for all of our RAG data and all of our language model back the data side of it. And it's not fun. So I can only imagine, and we're not doing like land and title documents, we're doing textbooks and papers. Right. So it's a little bit, or websites and stuff. It's always a lot more structured, but even then it's still very difficult, right? Like everyone thinks PDF is this like standard formatting, and it's not. It is just a dumpster fire where anything can go, and there's no formatting to it essentially. But what kind of challenges did you guys have around like specifically cursive with the language or the recognition stuff? Because that's not a easy thing to.
Yeah, cursive's still a really big problem. Absolutely.
We've gone to like 80, 85, somewhere in the 80% accuracy on cursive, which is really good. That's really, because really even reading it.
I mean, that's the thing, like, as a human,
exactly.
Right? Like, it turns everyone's cursive is different, right? Like, so I can't imagine.
It turns out the models are actually better at that than we are.
I completely makes sense, right? Like, I mean, everyone goes to the doctor. You look at your prescription, and you're like, I can't like that. So
Honestly, they can't even read it.
yeah. No, yeah,
I
absolutely.
think there's a reason why they switched to digital prescription.
Yeah.
So that was one of the challenges. I guess another one that we can talk about, and actually something that we're working on right now is depending on the survey system used for the land description. We started off doing rectangular survey systems, which is what's used in the majority of the United States and West Texas. But you have like, for example, the Eagle Ford Shale. A lot of the counties there use a meets and bounds system where they point out the corners of the tract. And they say walk from this old rod or rusty rod to this other end of the creek. The creek may not be there at the
It
time.
might be dried up.
Right. There's no water in the creek now, but there's
it's like
a
you can't
creek.
even tell it's a creek.
Might have been dammed off. Who knows?
Yeah. So they use that method of describing the land, and that's what legally that's what it is. So you have to kind of take it how it is and deal with it like that. So having to map that into a systematic way where we can, do our relationships and figure out this document 20 years later is actually talking about the same piece of land that was referenced in this document 20 years earlier. So that's one of the challenges that we're working on. I think we have some ideas how we can solve that.
We actually found a vendor.
Yeah. I know you were looking into that.
I think I told you about this a little bit.
You did, yeah.
But yeah, we found a vendor. They're a company called Bunting Labs. They do a QGIS plugin that reads your land documents or whatever, and then maps that onto your QGIS map or your GIS map or whatever. So they can read the meets and bounds, and they can draw the polygon, and then they can match it with, a set of, what do you call them?
Talking about coordinates?
Yeah, they use like, that thing that you put a reference.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
It's okay.
They use a system of references.
Is anyone using satellite or like aerial image data to try and also kind of triangulate some of this stuff?
That's what they use as their references. So if you have a picture and if you have the, whatever the map coordinates that you have, then they'll map that over.
That's a beautiful use of kind of combining technologies, right?
Absolutely.
Before you'd have to send the survey team out and they'd have to go manually do it by hand, right? No, that's so is there there's also, I assume that makes perfect sense with the land side of it. There's a whole GIS element to your platform and stuff as well. Nice.
So Eugene referenced like polygons. So the entire idea why we started with rectangular survey system was because it's like an easy way to transfer that into like essentially math. Right. So we would take a legal land description with it, which is natural language words, and we would map that into some sort of like graphing system or math system. And then we use that to form the relationships between the rest of the documents.
Nice.
So that's really neat.
We use that for production. What's it called? The net acreage reporting, right? So when you want to figure out, this person owns land in this tract, right? The tract is a square mile or something like that. He owns like a tiny piece, 1/130th or something like that. And you want to figure out, how many net acres that is, because you want to give that guy an offer, right? We can track that stuff.
That's awesome. Yeah, there's a lot, I feel like, coming out, or a lot of well-needed attention on the land side, because there are so many dynamics to that, right? One of our earlier guests, shout out to Pecantry Estimate. They're focused on basically the flip side of that, where you're a mineral owner and random oil and gas company or broker makes you an offer on your minerals. How do you know whether it's it's like Zillow. They say it's like Zillow for minerals, right? And then, so there's all these really interesting solutions out there. So it's always fun to see people kind of approaching, because it is not a trivial problem by any means from either side, right?
That's right.
So let's get into your stack a little bit. What are y'all using? So you mentioned a graph search. Are you using what kind of database are y'all using behind that? Are y'all using vector database or just a traditional kind of setup?
Well, we're using vector database to store the all the
embeddings,
outputs and the embeddings and stuff. But you can talk more about what we're storing the actual data in.
So the idea is we used the LLMs and AI to pull out these key attributes, exactly, extract key attributes that we really need from the document. Not saying not most of it. There's always these recurring themes that you're always looking for: the grantor, the grantee, the legal land description, effective date. All these things are sort of recurring in these documents. We pull them out, and once we have them out, all we have to do is store them into a relational database. So that's what we use. We use Postgres for the database, and we stored it in that. We're having, I guess, we're messing around with the best way to store a lot of these legal land descriptions. We're using Postgres because they have a lot of support for GIS, and they have this very nice plugin. So that's pretty much it. And I think that's
I think that's y'all are definitely in the right lane here. I've been telling people for months how good certain language models are at extracting information from documents. It's not just generative. It's being able to, like, OCR will be replaced by multimodal LLMs, in my opinion, in the near future, because it is so much like, if you've ever done OCR, you understand what I'm talking about. But if you haven't, people just say, oh yeah, I just use OCR. And it's like, oh, well, that's not quite how it works, right? Like it's not just a magic button. The language models seem to be better at, or we're getting closer to that magic button of here's the document. Tell me, enter the 3 keywords that you're trying to extract from it, and it will reliably do that. I did that. So our second version of Collide GPT, our language model, I've been working on for the last 3 or 4 months. But one of the big focuses we're doing with this next iteration is making sure we have all the metadata, and we cite all of our sources. And now we're going to be not only citing them, but referring you to the actual direct source with the link and all this stuff. So I've had a lot of success with, actually we ran a test with 4.0 and Gemini Flash 1.5, I think. Basically, I just took the first 10 pages of each book and I fed it to both models and said, give me the author, the title, the date, the ISBN, all the metadata about the book that I want. Gemini returned 3 times as many ISBN numbers than OpenAI did, which I thought was fascinating. And then I did some more research. Somebody, I think, told me that Gemini was trained for categorization, and it makes a lot more sense that Gemini would be better at it. But it's like the amount of time it would have taken me to do that on thousands of books versus it doing, and I still had to manually did some this week, but it was out of 3,000 or 4,000 papers that I pulled for this last batch, I had to manually do like 100 of them. Ooh, and so it's like,
I bet that wasn't fun.
Well, no, it's not fun, but I'll take 100 over 4,000 all 100% all day long, like, what is that? 10, 20% maybe. Yeah. And so it's like, that's not like, it's not perfect, but it's way better than manually having to do this shit. Sure. And so like, I think ultimately I say all this to say that I think the multimodal stuff, Llama just came out with their new one this week. I haven't even played with it, but I think the multimodal stuff is going to be revolutionary around that exact thing of, hey, here's all these documents, go through each one of them. I mean, it happens across every oil and gas operation. You have a report after every single thing that you do, which has all the important information in it, and it goes into a PDF where data goes to die, doesn't go into a database. And it's like, now you've got all these companies that have set up all these, God, I forgot what Microsoft calls their connector flow stuff, but their flow apps where it's like, okay, if an email
Visio or something,
it's like that, but it's like
the Azure stuff.
Yeah. They, they set up this automation where an email comes, or you get an email to this address with this in the subject. So then go take the PDF from that email, send it over here, and then run it through this OCR. And it's like, or you just feed it into a model and it extracts it and goes and does exactly what it wants. Like it's going to be a lot easier, I think, in the future for a lot of this stuff. Yeah,
we're definitely looking forward to that. I mean, just the thing about the OCR is we first started off doing I think we started using like standard Google's OCR. Yeah. And then slowly we tried other OCR vendors. And then when 4.0 came out, like you said, with the multimodal, we were like, okay, well, we know this can recognize, if you give it a document, this can recognize text on it. How much better is it even better than traditional OCR? So that's where we went in. We did some testing. I think we ended up finding out it was like maybe a little better, maybe not much better. It wasn't really too different, just because the OCR that we were using at the time was pretty good. And yeah, so it was really just about all these tools that we have and then end up choosing the best one for our need.
One really cool place where it is better using the multimodal model. If you OCR something, typically it's really hard to include like the location data and to translate the location data into some meaningful insight about the document. But if you're using the multimodal model, that stuff kind of gets baked in.
Yeah.
So being able to answer the question, is this piece of text a title?
Right.
Or is this piece of text a page number at the bottom?
Or a caption.
Or a caption.
Yes. Right.
That's much easier. That's much easier with the multimodal model.
That's I think a thing a lot of people don't realize about like with RAG in general is that, you're essentially VLOOKUPing a database, which is the vector database for your RAG model. But the tricky part is if you want to do it well and you want to be able to display the results how they were originally created in the original document, you have to understand how the document is constructed, understand what order, a lot of the, God, I never, ever thought that technical papers would be an issue, but then you get in there and it's like, there's 2 columns.
That's right.
So when it gets to the bottom of one column, like, does it read it all the way across or does it read down to the bottom of the column and then back up to the next one? And so there's all these like nuances about that stuff that these things just keep getting better about. But it's, you essentially have to figure out how to deconstruct the original document so that, and then have all the information about how it's constructed so you can reconstruct it when someone wants that information or wants to search for it. So it's non-trivial, but I completely agree with you. The multimodals are really, really good, or a lot of the tools that they've built around the multimodals are really, really good at like, okay, here's the document, here's the title, here's what's in the header, here's the headings and subheadings of the document. And so it's like from there, you can pretty quickly kind of figure out how you can just reconstruct or deconstruct a document by an index. If I know like, okay, here's each header, and then the subheaders within those, but then it's like, okay, well, then there's also a random diagram and an equation on this page too. And so some of these new tools, it's like, okay, well, that equation is inside these coordinates, like it gives you the coordinates on the document where it is. And so you can always return that with 100% confidence instead of being like, oh, well, there's an image over here, but we don't really have a way to tell you or always return it. It's there's a lot to it.
Yeah.
But what are some of the kind of lessons learned that you guys have had over this? Because what y'all are doing, I think applies to it's not just land, right? Like we have so many documents in every industry basically, but what are some of the things that, you guys learned that you would do again or wouldn't do again kind of moving forward? Also, where are you guys just kind of company wise? Where are you guys at? Are y'all kind of still early stage? Do you have funding or anything like that? Just give me an idea of how big you guys are so I can understand where you're at in your journey.
So we're very early stage. We've been at it for a little less than a year, maybe coming up on a year pretty soon.
Congrats.
And no, I guess proper or
no institutional
VC,
funding.
no VC funding at all. Mainly bootstrapped. So
friends and family.
Yeah. It's the best way to do it at the beginning. It's the hardest, but it's the best way to do it at the beginning for sure. So, okay. So given that, how are some of your kind of customers or pilots and stuff going? What are their main kind of takeaways or benefits that there's your customer feedback that you're getting?
Yeah, so I guess the main feedback is just like the amount of time it saves. Right. I mean, let's say if you're handling, if you're trying to buy new properties every week, right? You're basically starting a process every week that will last a month or something like that. So you're stacking all these, concurrent processes. But if we can shave 2-3 weeks off that process, then, you can do the whole thing and, find more deals in the same time, right? I mean, that stuff is to a large degree being taken care of for you. So, you can just do more deal flow.
Yeah. No, that makes I mean, like I said, the amount of people, if you've never done it, and I haven't, but I've been close enough to people who do it to know how painful it is. But like, if you've never done land and title, it's not easy. It's not fun. And that's a perfect example, in my opinion, of technology should replace the shit that humans don't like doing and we're not good at.
Yes.
Like that's where we should absolutely lean on technology. And so it's like, reading thousands of pages of cursive, not my personal top of the list thing I want to do tonight. So let's let a language model do it for me.
So actually one thing, challenge that we've noticed that's pretty recurring with most of our customers that we're talking to and working with is the fact that, yes, we can automate a lot of these egregious tasks that they don't like doing. But one big thing is the probates themselves. They're in a different court. In land documents, they're usually with the county clerk, but the actual probates are with the court clerk. So it's a different part of the county. And that's where sometimes you will find where the inheritance and who gets what. And that you could tell once you're doing a title work on a tract, you could see that there was a lapse here. And that's where you have to go as a landman, or pretty much us now, is you have to go figure out, was there any probates there? And a lot of times the land documents themselves are digitized, but not the probates, or the probates are completely different system that you have to go call the county, request it. And sometimes that could take weeks to get back. So that's something that we're definitely working towards automating. But the fact that there's the way the county works and the way the government there works is just making it very hard for us. Yeah.
No, I think that's another nuance that the average person doesn't realize is it's like the state of Texas has its own state stuff. Every other state has its own state stuff, and then everybody has federal stuff. And it's, everything is always different. I mean, that's another thing with the mineral side. I never envy is the vertical, depth mineral, oh, well, I own it from this up and someone else owns it down. And you're like, oh man, there's a whole nother complexity thrown into that. Right.
Yeah.
How do y'all, so where y'all, are there data sources that you guys can pull in for a lot of these land and title, or is there still a lot of manual stuff, or how does that kind of work on the platform?
Oh, it's every different sort of thing. I mean, any way you can imagine data being presented to you, that's how we get it. So sometimes we're really lucky and we can just buy the data outright from the county. Sometimes the county doesn't want to or can't because of some contract that they had with some other data provider. And then we have to get them individually. So, at that point we have to, navigate their system and pull the docs out ourselves, which, that adds a whole nother dimension to the time. And then sometimes the documents are all paper, right? It's just paper, microfiche.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'm familiar with microfiche. I'm old enough to have used microfiche in the library back when people went to the library.
Hey, you just got to ask nicely, and then they'll let you take pictures.
I mean, it's just so funny to me because there's so much of the data problems, regardless of of what industry you're in. So many of the data problems stem from the fact that the data just isn't digitized or structured properly, right? And it's crazy.
I mean, from their perspective, it makes sense. I mean, you're talking about a county that has 9,000 people.
Well, that's what I'm saying, right? There's no way to solve it because there's no incentive unless the state comes out and says, "Hey, everyone, you're going to have to fucking digitize this because we want you to digitize it." And then it's like, okay, well, great. Now we have Texas. All right. Well, now we got 49 more. It's still every state has their own stuff. So it's such it's a necessary evil. But I'm glad there are people like you guys that are focused on hey, let's make this way more efficient than it has been in the past.
You end up having favorite counties a lot of the times. You're like, I like working with Howard County because everything's digitized there and it's very easy to access. Yeah. But then a county right next to it is the complete opposite. Right. So you end up having
they never pick up the phone or
never pick up the phone, always leave a message. And then if you want anything, you're going to have to go there yourself. Right. You're going to have to drive from here. It's 13, 14 hours all the way to West Texas just to look at a few documents.
Right. Yeah, they can't email them to you.
No,
Heaven forbid.
definitely not.
Right. Let's see what else. What are y'all? Which are y'all all cloud based, or do you self host, or how is your kind of architecture?
Yeah, we're cloud based right now. So when Eugene and I first started, we definitely since this is our first like business, first startup, we knew there was going to be some mistakes that we made, and we're going to learn from them.
Mm-hmm.
And there were a few things that we knew, or at least from hearing from our buddies who've started their own companies, that we knew we wanted to get right. And one of them was the way we host and serve our platform. We knew we needed to move fast and not really worried about doing it perfectly or something like that. So we host right now on Vercel, which is just a wrapper on AWS.
We've got some Vercel stuff too.
Very easy to ship. Like you can get up. I think I could probably speed run something up within like 30 minutes, maybe even less. That's how quick it is. So we got that right, and we're very happy about it. And then we used, like I said, Postgres. They do some offerings for their backends, but a full TypeScript stack, all on Vercel, and allows us to move fast, which is the most important thing right now.
That's one of the biggest mistakes I feel like most startups make, is that they're so worried about it being perfect that they're not shipping. And because they're not shipping, they're not getting traction or customers. And because they're not getting traction and customers, they don't have any revenue. And then they close up shop. And it's like one of the last boss I had at HiveCell, which is my only true stint into the tech side of things. He said, don't let perfection be the blocker of progress, or something to that effect. Right. Yeah. And that really stuck with me after that, because it's like, here, Colin is very much, hey, if you're not embarrassed by it when you ship it, you're too late.
Yes.
It should be pseudo embarrassing, or like have some, you're going to know it better than anyone else that uses it. So you have to like keep that in the back of your head of like, how many people are actually going to go down this random chain of steps that I got to that resulted in this bug. It's like probably not most of them. Right. Like, and so, no, I think that's y'all are spot on with that strategy. Cause that there's so many times where it's like, you have an idea, you don't know if it's going to work or not, or if like the market wants it, but the only way to know is to put it out there.
That's right.
You've got to put it out there.
Yes.
Gotta get eyes on it.
Yes. Yeah. And if you can't rapidly deploy, test, and prototype, like we're huge on low code stuff and, tools like that, where, there's some of these low code kind of LLM RAG things now where it's like, I can run Llama on my laptop in a fully orchestrated RAG within 30 minere on a new thing.
Sweet.
Just to see if it works. Like just to see if my hypothesis was like, are there legs here or not? If there aren't, it's very quick and it's obvious. Yeah. If there are, then it's like, oh, well, I didn't just go spend 2 months trying to figure this out. Right. It's just like, yes, we're going to spend time figuring it out, but it's probably worth trying to versus this doesn't look like it worked very well at all. So let's just not do that. Right.
And it's very against intuition. Like the companies that I worked at, they were, billion-dollar SaaS companies where I was even on the SRE or DevOps team where I wrote Terraform and I wrote backend scripts and I did validation software to make sure that a stack that stood up for a customer is working right. Right. I could do all that. Automation. It's just, I know how slow it is. I know how painful it is. And I could just do this, maybe not the most efficient thing and the most prettiest thing, but it gets the job done. And that's the most important thing.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing too, in the startup side, right? Is it's like and it's frustrating from when you are coding, because you're like, I know in the next 6 months I'm gonna have to rip and replace this at some point, but you just have to do it. And that's like, I kind of coined this startup masochist term. And I truly believe that like most entrepreneurs and startup folks have some kind of masochistic tendency, because it is like, especially on the development side, right? It's like, oh, well, every 3 to 6 months, I'm redoing the same thing that I did 3 to 6 months ago for a new, for this one random outlier thing that popped up, or because we have to move to a different platform or what, whatever. But you have to be comfortable with the dynamics of that. And like, it's always going to change and it's never going to be perfect. And
always be ready to shoot your darlings.
Yes. Yeah. They don't always have to have perfect hair and makeup before you present them, and they don't, and you don't always have to leave them there if they're crappy or remove them. But, so y'all are, it sounds like AWS.
Yeah.
Okay.
AWS. Yeah.
I was going to ask you a little bit more about the fine-tuned models. Are y'all using any specific open source or closed source models or anything like that? Or are y'all doing them yourselves? Or?
Yeah, we tried out the open source models. They don't work that well, and they're a lot harder to fine tune.
You've got to stand them up and maintain.
It's a lot. It's a lot more work, and the price of the closed source models is just so good. It just doesn't, like, why would you do all of that work? I mean, granted, there's obviously some use cases like if the data is very, very sensitive. Right? If you're doing
that's really the
security
only
clearance.
Argument.
That's right.
Right.
In my opinion, yeah.
But yeah, if you're not doing government work, why? Why would you put yourself through
that?
But
our production data is our IP.
Yeah.
Come on.
I mean,
it's our proprietary. No one else is doing the same thing that we're doing at all. We're all doing the exact same thing.
We can do that for you.
Yeah.
I'll put it this way. We can do that for you, but it will be a charge on top. That's for sure.
No, that's I just think it's so wild how our industry has approached data for so long, and how behind, or how we've learned a lot of hard lessons that we wouldn't have had to learn if people would have just talked about shit. Like frac interference is a perfect one, right? We've got all these crazy development plans to put, these wine racks and all this stuff in West Texas. And then it's like, oh, it turns out you can't just shove a bunch of wells in one lease because they all pull from the same formation. And
only so much oil down there.
Right. Yeah. And so we've got enterprise deployments and stuff, and it's very interesting to see. As you can imagine, the big companies are all very hyper focused on data security, and they want it all in house and on their Azure environment, and nothing open source or nothing closed source. But to your point, it is a hell of a lot easier to use most of these closed source. They also have a lot more tools to go with them. And it's just so much faster, right? Like I still use the OpenAI playground for all kinds of shit just to, again, test it out and see if there might be something there. And if there's not, then not a big deal. But how are y'all fine tuning through the models tools? Or are y'all using a different, I'm curious on the fine tuning side, because we're potentially looking into that in the future. And there's a bunch of like platforms out there that are like, oh, we'll help you fine tune your stuff.
Fine tuning as a service, but it's like that.
How much, I'm just curious from your experience, like you don't have to say which ones or anything like that, but how has that been? Do you have any confidence in these third parties, or are y'all doing it all yourself?
Well, from my experience, if you're using the closed source models, you really don't have a choice. You have to use whatever tools the closed source model provides. I mean, I don't really see how, for example, for GPT-4o, I don't see how a third party could fine tune GPT-4o for you, right? Yeah, I mean, for the open source models, I guess the third party fine tuning services could be fine if you're trying to ship something out pretty quickly. But I mean, you're already putting so much work into it already. You may as well just spin that part up. I mean, that's not the hard part of the whole process anyway. It's really the hard part is getting the data for the fine tuning in the first place.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, you don't want to, you really don't want to put the wrong data in there, because then you're teaching it the wrong thing, and it's going to be really accurate in a very bad way.
Yeah. Then you'll be like Gemini with all the Reddit troll returns. Yeah. I actually added that to, we're doing a hackathon this weekend, and I added that a screenshot of those to one of the challenges, because one of the challenges is, hey, we're going to give you all the Collide post data and the likes and comments, come up with an algorithm to help us figure out how we determine whether this post and this content is, one, valid, and two, worthy of adding to the RAG model so that it's there in the future for the knowledge base, like the brain to get bigger.
Yeah, it's an interesting problem. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. It's a very interesting problem. And then you look at, what the whole Gemini Reddit stuff, and it's like, as someone who's working on that stuff, I'm like, I know exactly what happened. One of two things happened. Either someone's manager was like, I don't care, ship it. So the developers were saying, it's not ready, it's not good. And they just didn't have the time. Or the whoever was responsible was just super lazy, and they're like, hey, we're just going to go based off of upvotes, and we aren't going to account for the fact that Reddit is full of trolls.
Yes.
And they probably upvote the funniest comments as well as the accurate comments. And there's no really good way to distinguish between that. But it's that's it's a non-trivial thing when you try and like with fine tuning, even right to your point. It's like, how do you, okay, I've got a shit ton of data, but how do I validate to know that that data is worthy of adding to my fine tuned model? Or is it just data that I don't need to worry about? What's your kind of approach and strategy been on that side?
Yeah, so the thing that's worked for us is to just craft it by hand.
Yeah.
We just sit down with those documents and we painstakingly read them and transcribe everything into the slot it's supposed to go in.
Yeah.
And then that's how it goes.
Yeah. No, I mean,
nothing else has worked.
No, that's with a lot of this stuff. I was telling Colin earlier, like I was going through the manual metadata stuff and I was like, yeah, I just finished. It's like our metadata is going to be so fucking glorious. Like it's going to be so good because I did so much of it by hand. You know, it's a pain in the ass, and the only thing you can do is grind through it. Like there's nothing else. There's no other way to do it. What kind of traction? Who are your typical kind of customers, or who are your target customers?
Mineral buyers. Mostly.
Okay.
Yeah. Because I know on like it could be argued that operators also look to buy mineral interests, and but we've realized that the mineral buyers themselves are much easier to work with. Yeah. They're fine with moving fast, and
I was going to say it's a much faster, easier. You don't have a whole legal team dissecting your MSAs and doing all the privacy shit.
You're dealing with a lot fewer people.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's usually like a few man. These mineral buying companies are like just a few people working on it.
It's a bunch of ex-land guys that buy minerals now, right?
Yeah. I can just email the founder, email the partner, the person who actually just runs the mineral buying company, and just work with him directly. And so that's where we find the most success. We're definitely like looking down the road, see where we can go, but mineral buying is definitely pretty much our bread and butter right now.
And is it? How does that work? Is it kind of a SaaS product or?
Yeah, there's a SaaS product. Some of these mineral buyers have like odd requests here and there.
Right.
And we're perfectly capable of, providing that as well.
Yeah.
So
nice.
Yeah, it usually ends up being a combination of that.
Very cool. What is y'all's kind of, plan moving forward? Are y'all going to try and grow from cash flow? Or are y'all going to try and get investors? Or do you know yet? Also, not knowing is also perfectly acceptable because it's your first year. So it's not even, just out of curiosity, y'all.
Yeah, I guess it depends on, what the optimal path is for it at that given time, right? Like what's the deal? Are they offering like good terms? Are we getting good cash flow?
Yeah. No, that's a good answer.
I mean, we're alive and we're kicking, and we're not going anytime soon. So there's not really a huge impulse for us to go reach out to VCs or stuff like that.
What were some of the problems that you faced prior that you have or you wanted to work on or try and solve with a company that we haven't already talked about, or is it mostly what we've already talked about?
What do you mean?
As far as like before you started the company, or when you were at Opportune or anywhere else prior, are there any like glaring kind of big things that were like, man, this is the worst?
Like other ideas
for
us to solve? Yeah, we had, there's this one idea with looking at production accounting.
Yeah.
From
a lot of opportunity there too.
Production accounting from like, midstream and from the well site, and seeing if those things match up. Right. And seeing if, someone's stealing from someone else or whatever. I think we also had this one thing, the CRM based thing. You guys could tell you more about that.
Oh no, it was a CMS system.
CMS, my bad.
Change management system. So, I mean, this is not really related to energy or oil and gas, but we working at some companies, the bureaucracy there was just so big that there was an entire system where you would want to go change one small thing in one server, and you had to go through this entire process. Yeah. And the company that I was working for, they actually had an in-house built system for this entire process. They had this entire system where you would essentially request it, and then someone who's allowed to approve would go approve it. And if it becomes a very common change, like we find ourselves changing this environment variable or this setting on this EC2 instance a lot, we would go ahead and automate it. And then that way we would let automation take care of it. Yeah. And the automation would go open up the request, close it because it doesn't need approval, because it's deemed like a safe change. Right. So we decided, we thought about maybe building something like that.
That's a cool idea.
For companies.
Kind of like a DevOps almost.
Exactly. Yeah. And we would handle the entire thing, like any software that would go with it. And we would, so we thought about it, but I don't know, we ended up talking to a lot of people in multiple industries, and it was just such a glaring problem in land and oil and gas that we were like, let's just look at this first.
That's cool, man.
You end up wanting to solve the problem of the people who talk to you the most.
Yeah. Right. No, for sure. Or the one, that frustrates you, that has frustrated you personally the most too, right? Like that's always, that's the fastest way to get me to dive deep on something, is throw something at me that I'm like, this is just stupid. I need to and this is a dumb way of doing it.
Especially if multiple people talk about the same thing. Like we were talking to people like all across the land industry, and it would just the same problem would come up, and we're like, this is definitely not a coincidence. There's something here.
Yeah. No, I've got a good buddy. I'll introduce y'all after this podcast too, that he was a landman at Chesapeake and at a bunch of different operators, but mostly on like the exploration side back when shale was, blowing and going and $100 oil and everyone was buying up acreage left and right. And he has a minerals business, and he's like, he is your target buyer, right, for this type of thing and stuff. And so it's true. It's like those guys, I mean, you can know the process and what's a good value and all of that, but that doesn't mean that doesn't mean that you can always get these deals done, because then you still have to go to the damn courthouse and do all this, like nothing, you know. So having a platform where it's like he can work from wherever the hell he is at that moment in time and not have to spend a week in Midland or wherever just researching is inherently valuable out of the gate. So where can I'm sorry, I'm jumping ahead. This is the speed round where I can't believe we're already an hour. These things never cease to amaze me how quickly they go. Let's do speed round. Favorite video or board game?
I'm a big fan of backgammon.
Backgammon? Yeah. Nice. Yeah. My grandfather taught me backgammon, and then I haven't played it in 20 something years.
Not a lot of people play it.
I was at
at least I don't eat married.
No, you're right. I randomly was at like a restaurant over here in City Center for like lunch one day, and there were these two old guys playing backgammon. I was like, oh shit, that's awesome. I had like a weird like memory flashback moment with my grandfather.
Catan.
Yeah.
That's a good one too. Yeah. Absolutely.
Favorite book or podcast or
Originally got into the Sean Ryan show. I discovered him like 2 weeks ago. He's very big, but I just recently discovered him.
It's so amazing to me. Like podcasts specifically are so crazy because it's like, there's so many, but it's like that. It's like you had never even heard of it. And then you're like, oh, well, this guy's huge. How have I not heard of him? Exactly. And you're like, oh, well, because there's lots of people that there's only so much capacity that you have for that stuff. What about you?
I don't know if I'd call it my favorite, but the one that I just found recently, I've gotten really into. Have you heard of Hardcore History at all?
Yeah.
There's this guy that does hardcore Game of Thrones.
Oh, nice.
He mimics Dan Carlin's voice. And he does.
This is also why I love podcasts. It's like a creative outlet. Like whoever, I would have never thought of that, but I love that idea. Right?
It's great. You should check it out.
That's awesome.
I think it's on YouTube.
What's it called?
Hardcore Game of Thrones.
It's also search SEO optimized. I appreciate that too, right? Like not coming up with some random name that, you wouldn't be able to tell from it. Last one, favorite open source library.
Swift.
Okay. How's it going?
I'm gonna be honest with you. I just check to see which one will solve the problem I'm doing, and then I'll just
Spoken
pick that
like
one.
a good developer is,
Yeah.
is spot on. No one has a good answer to the favorite because there isn't a favorite, right?
Yeah.
Like there's
Yeah.
so many.
My favorite is the one that solves the problem
Yes.
I have right now.
Right. That has already been done, that I don't have to build something from scratch.
Yeah,
that
and is
solves my
easy to
problem.
work with,
Yes.
preferably.
Yeah,
For
Preferably.
sure.
Or the one I'm learning right now. So,
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So that was, I guess, something I forgot to ask you guys. What do y'all code in normally? Is it Python or
TypeScript.
TypeScript?
Yeah, mainly TypeScript. We do some Python. Eugene usually does a lot of Python for the
Mhm.
AI stuff.
Yeah, all the ETL and backend stuff.
Exactly. But the TypeScript's the main
Nice.
thing right now.
Easier for the web app.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that makes a ton of sense. Where can people find you if they're interested in talking to you guys?
They can email us at info@ionianlabs.com or really anything at ionianlabs.com because we own the domain.
And that's
Or-
the website, ionianlabs.com.
ionianlabs.com.
That's
Yeah.
right.
And y'all
Or
have
LinkedIn.
Y'all on LinkedIn and stuff too.
Yeah.
Guys, I really appreciate it. Everybody go check these guys out, especially I know I don't know how many of y'all are listening to my podcast, but I know there are plenty of mineral buyers out there in our community that will probably find this very interesting. So go check them out. Appreciate you guys. Give us a like and a subscribe if you get a chance. We will see you guys next time. Thanks.